Did you know that in 2025, something once unthinkable is now quietly happening around the world? One by one, countries are warning their citizens to be careful when visiting the United States. Not just rivals, but allies, friends, nations that once trusted America without question. They're not banning travel, but the message is clear. Go if you must, but understand the risk. Border detentions, civil unrest, unpredictable rules. The U.S., once seen as safe and stable, is now raising red flags worldwide. Stick around until number 5, because what's happening there is a warning sign for the future of global travel. But before we dive in, hit that like button and subscribe. Because this isn't just about travel, it's about the world's shifting view of America. Number 1, Canada. Canada has always been America's quiet ally, but in 2025, it's telling citizens to be cautious, and that says everything. The government's updated advisory urges travelers to stay alert in public places, brace for mass shootings, and prepare for deep scrutiny at the border, including phone and device searches. It also warns that U.S. laws vary widely by state, and legal protections can't be assumed. And while the language may be diplomatic, the message is clear. The U.S. is no longer seen as reliably safe, even for Canadians. Behind the scenes, that fear is growing louder. Immigration lawyer Len Saunders, based near the Peace Arch crossing, says he's never seen so many Canadians afraid to visit. The old rules no longer apply, he warns. Even travelers with clean records are being turned away. Muslim background travelers have reported hours-long detentions and intense questioning. And if that's how they treat Canadians, where does that leave everyone else? Number 2, United Kingdom. The UK hasn't banned travel to the US, but their 2025 advisory sends a quiet warning. Don't expect the same rights you're used to. British citizens are urged to be prepared for unpredictable policing, sudden unrest, and legal isolation, especially in major cities. But underneath the safety tips is a more serious truth. Once things go wrong, you may not have anyone in your corner. In early 2025, British artist Rebecca Burke was detained at the US-Canada border. She had posted about unpaid homestays on Instagram, something US officials interpreted as illegal work. She was shackled, branded an immigration violator, and locked in a detention center for 19 days. No trial, no charges, just silence. Her story shocked both countries and sparked calls for better protections. Because when someone who followed the rules ends up jailed for nearly 3 weeks, travel begins to feel less like a right and more like a risk. Number 3, Germany. Germany's travel advisory doesn't just warn about danger, it warns about a completely different system. German citizens are told to prepare for unpredictable law enforcement, sudden escalations, and rules that change from state to state. But more importantly, they're warned not to assume US laws work like European ones. In Germany, rights are clear and consistent. In the US, what's legal in one state might get you arrested in another. One wrong word or nervous gesture, especially in a foreign language, can turn routine travel into a legal nightmare. And it's not just theory. In March, 2 German teens arriving in Hawaii were detained, strip-searched, and jailed overnight. Authorities suspected they might work remotely, despite valid travel documents. They were deported the next day without charges. Their story made headlines back home, where German media called the U.S. unsafe for tourists, citing racial profiling, legal chaos, and a system that feels increasingly out of control. This isn't just a safety warning, it's a reality check. Number 4, Australia. Australia has long had a complicated view of the U.S., admiration mixed with caution, but in 2025, that caution became official. The government's updated advisory warns not just about street violence, but about the entire experience of entering the U.S. Travelers are now urged to be ready for aggressive border checks, interrogations, and even detentions if anything in their background raises a flag. And it's happening. In June, an Australian journalist arriving at LAX was held for over 12 hours. Border agents questioned him about past political blog posts related to Palestinian protests, searched his phone, and ultimately deported him. despite holding valid documentation. No charges, no explanation. That's what makes this advisory so serious. It's not just about staying safe on the street, it's about whether you'll even be allowed in. For a country that shares language, culture, and military ties with the US, that shift is jarring. Just because you're an ally doesn't mean you're welcome. Number 5, France. France's 2025 advisory throws a spotlight on something deeper than crime. It's about atmosphere. In a rare shift, the French government is now flagging specific urban areas in the US, warning travelers to stay alert, avoid walking alone at night, and use caution in certain neighborhoods. French media have gone even further, highlighting rising racial unrest, police violence, and unpredictable attacks. They caution that routine moments, walking near a protest, being stopped in traffic, or simply looking out of place, can spiral into dangerous situations. Even a French scientist traveling to a US conference was recently denied entry after a phone search, an incident that sparked diplomatic concern back in Paris. This isn't a sensational warning, it's measured, but serious. France isn't telling people to cancel trips, but it is saying, don't expect safety and don't expect fairness, especially if you don't fit the mold. And that message, coming from a longtime ally, says a lot. Number 6, Denmark. Denmark's advisory isn't loud or dramatic, but it hits a very specific nerve. In March 2025, Danish authorities issued a warning aimed at transgender and non-binary travelers. Anyone with a gender marker of X or whose passport details may not match their appearance is urged to contact the US Embassy before travel. That might sound like a technicality, but it's not. It reflects rising concern about how the US handles identity at the border. Under new policy shifts, travelers who don't match traditional ID norms risk being questioned, delayed, or denied entry without explanation. And the concern hasn't stayed within the LGBTQ+ community. Denmark now reports one of the sharpest drops in US-bound travel across Europe. For a country known for inclusion and progressive values, this kind of advisory is rare. It doesn't scream danger, but it quietly asks, if your identity doesn't fit the mold, should you really go? Number 7, New Zealand. New Zealanders are known for their easygoing travel spirit, but in 2025, their government took a more serious stance on visiting the US. The current advisory urges citizens to exercise increased caution, citing gun violence, mass shootings, and the risk of being caught in protests or unrest. But what really stands out is how it talks about preparedness. Kiwis are now advised to review active shooter survival guides before traveling, not cultural tips, not etiquette, actual preparation, in case they're caught in a mass shooting. But safety inside the US isn't the only concern. Just getting past the border has become its own ordeal. At least 8 New Zealanders have been detained at US border checkpoints since November. One woman was held for 15 hours, interrogated for 5, and chained by the legs before being sent home, despite having valid documents and no criminal history. Now, even New Zealand's Ministry of Foreign Affairs is reviewing whether the US is safe enough to visit. Because in 2025, even the safest travelers know the rules have changed. Number 8, Ireland. Ireland isn't known for harsh words, especially not about the US, but in 2025, their travel guidance took a more serious tone. The Department of Foreign Affairs now urges Irish travelers to be cautious when entering the US, especially if their personal documents don't align with American expectations. That includes non-standard gender markers, but also extends to visa eligibility, entry interviews, and possible detentions if officials flag something as unusual. And those warnings aren't abstract. In April, Irish citizen and longtime U.S. resident Cleona Ward was detained and shackled after returning from a family visit to Cork, despite having valid papers. Her case sparked union protests, public outrage, and pressure from U.S. lawmakers. It's not dramatic on paper, but for a country that's long trusted the U.S., the tone speaks volumes. And it reflects growing unease about how unpredictable U.S. border enforcement has become. For Irish travelers, the message now is clear. Have your paperwork tight, and be ready for questions you didn't expect. Number 9. Finland. Finland doesn't issue strong travel warnings lightly, but in 2025, they did something rare. Their updated advisory urges citizens to reconsider travel to the U.S., citing increased border enforcement, political instability, and a rise in incidents affecting Finnish travelers, even those with valid visas or STay approvals. Finnish officials now warn that entry isn't guaranteed, and that travelers may be turned away with no clear reason. Visitors are advised to carry full documentation, print their bookings, and avoid trips during major U.S. holidays or politically sensitive dates. The advisory also mentions the growing risk of mass shootings, as well as a tense social atmosphere in certain states, especially for immigrants and minority groups. Finland also notes that gender document mismatches may cause border issues. For a country known for calm, consistency, and trust in systems, this kind of warning is unsettling. Number 10. China. When a global powerhouse like China urges its citizens to reconsider travel to the United States, it's not just a safety warning. It's a message between giants. In April 2025, Chinese authorities issued a renewed advisory urging travelers to thoroughly assess the risks before heading to the U.S. They cited rising discrimination, political instability, and a spike in anti-Asian sentiment, especially in large American cities and airports. But this isn't just about racism, it's about optics. China is telling its people, don't assume America is safe, fair, or friendly anymore. And behind the scenes, there's more going on. With trade wars escalating and diplomatic ties deteriorating, this warning doubles as a political signal. The U.S. is no longer considered a trusted destination, even for students or business travelers. The result? Fewer flights, fewer visas, and a chilling message. If you go to the U.S. now, you're going at your own risk, and maybe against your own country's advice. So when even allies, neutral nations, and rivals are all warning their citizens about the same country, something's changed. This isn't just about safety, it's about how the world now sees the United States, unpredictable, divided, and in some cases dangerous. These aren't just travel advisories, they're quiet signals. The U.S. is no longer seen as automatic, and for some, no longer dependable. What do you think? Is the fear overblown? Or are these warnings long overdue? Either way, the world is watching.